All right, Nick, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. This is a team that's kind of gone under the radar. People haven't noticed the moves they make. Then this goes all the way back to last year, Nick. The Falcons have been doing some really smart stuff. You see the results of it in last year, and we're seeing some more moves coming into this free agency period that prove they have a plan, they're sticking to it, and I think it's going to work, Nick.
Yeah, the Falcons are looking really dangerous. I think a lot of Falcons fans will be really excited what you have to say, Miles. But before we get into that, as always, we want to hear from Falcons fans in the comments section below. We're talking about maybe under the radar, behind the scenes move the Falcons are doing. So let's talk about an under the radar, behind the scenes players. Let's go backup quarterbacks. Interesting question for you guys. Give us your favorite backup quarterback in Atlanta Falcons history in the comment section below. Really interesting question for you guys. And make sure you stick around to the end of today's video to hear a word from our partner, Neuro. But all right, Miles, what you got? What's the latest out of Atlanta?
All right, Nick. So if we rewind all the way back to last NFL draft, we go to see the start of Atlanta's plan. It's a move of kind of under radar moves, Nick. Things that they haven't seen. People don't expect to maybe be that smart. You see, they draft Desmond Ridder, who we'll see if that one pans out. But I think there's a lot of confidence in that move from the Falcons. But you see two other picks, Nick, that really struck gold for the Falcons. And I'm going to pull up the image here. It's from PFF, and it's the highest graded players from last season per PFF. And number 3 and number 4 are Tyler Algier and Drake London, 86.7 and 83.2 respectively. These are two of the highest graded rookie offensive players in the entire NFL last year. They seem to be hit these draft picks out of the park. They're very solid contributors to this Falcons team. And I think this is all part of the plan of this rebuild. And they're rebuilding to their brand of football, Nick. And they know exactly what they want to do. And I think there was a big move they made this free agency period that is kind of going to stick to that. And that is the signing of none other than linebacker Caden Ellis, Nick. I think he's another move that is kind of under the radar. People might not think is as big as it is, but he's going to pan out very well for the Falcons, and I think it's going to be one that's going to be really productive on defense. And I'm going to read from the article here from PFF as well. Ellis made the first start of his NFL career in Week 10 with New Orleans Saints after getting drafted 244th overall in 2019. He played over 400 snaps, and from Week 10 to the end of the season, Ellis had an 89.8 overall grade. He led all linebackers in that respect. He had a 90.5 run defensive grade, ranked 4th of all defenders, 78 pass rush grade, 11th overall, and a 70.2 coverage grade, 24th overall, Nick. So this means that he was pretty dang good at the very last few weeks of playing with the Saints. And I think people in the Falcons organization saw this. And even Ryan Nielsen, former defensive coach for the Saints, was seeing this in practice, and they decided to bring Ellis over to kind of get ahead of the curve because they realized that he was a big-time boomer bust style of player. And this is going to be a signing that was going to be huge for them, and they got in on it early because they saw the early success in the last part of the season, Nick. So I think there's been a couple of under-the-radar moves, and Ellis is one of them that is going to be huge for the Falcons. What do you think about this move? What do you think about last year? And what do you think about potentially going into the draft this year?
So every offseason, and really, if you look at a team like the Falcons, who are kind of in a multi-year rebuild the last couple of years, I always look for a plan and a strategy. And the first thing is understanding what you're good at and understanding what you're not in terms of roster building. Because no matter who you have in your front office, your scouting department, your coaching staff, everyone's going to have their own strengths and weaknesses, and you're going to have your own strengths and weaknesses as an organization. That's just the way it works in the NFL. Everyone has things they're good at. Everyone has things they're not. And to me, you look at the Atlanta Falcons, they are darn good at drafting offensive players. You go back to Chris Lindstrom, animal, great guard. You go back to Kyle Pitts, phenomenal athlete. You go back to last year, you brought up the guys from the PFF, right? You look at that. So you look at, okay, you look at London, the receiver, Algier, the running back, and we'll see how Ritter turns out as a quarterback. But sometimes maybe the defensive line maybe hasn't been as good, or maybe defense in general in terms of drafting. Generally speaking, I know there's some exceptions to the rule. So what do the Falcons do with a lot of cap space, Mize? They go out, attack defensive players. They get Ellis, who's going to looks like he's a breakout guy, potential superstar. They make sure to go out and get the other defensive lineman from New Orleans, Onyemata. Almost forgot his name there for a second. Of course, they got the safety from Cincinnati. I am forgetting his name. Jesse Bates. There it is. I almost forgot it. And of course, they got in some other depth guys in some other areas as well. Calais Campbell, right? Defensive player, right? So this is a Falcons team that understands they're really good at evaluating, scouting, and developing offensive players through the draft. They are not as good at evaluating defensive players through the draft, but they're really darn good at finding value in free agency with defensive players. So again, it's understanding what you're good at and focusing your efforts in that direction. And when you have a team like the Falcons, when you're in a multi-year rebuild, right, they get that Matt Ryan contract off the books, Julio Jones' dead cap off the books, kind of restructure the entire team from the top down, get rid of the Matt Ryan era and go forward. And they found their plan, Mize, and like you said, they're sticking to it, and they're doing a great job. Because you look at teams that kind of do dumb things. I hate to say it, but you look at a team like Cleveland for a number of years, they seem to, every 2 years, they seem to just switch. They're like, they're going to follow this plan, and then the next year, they're going to follow this plan. And, they just weren't consistent. They didn't understand what they were good at, what they weren't good at. The Falcons do. And I give a lot of credit to Terry Fontenot for understanding this, because the temptation is there if you've got a OBJ or you've got a Lamar Jackson that could potentially be available, right? And you're like, hey, I want to make a move for that guy, even though it's just not what I'm good at. I'm better if I'm offense. I should go draft, and defense, I should go free agency. But Lamar Jackson, shiny toy. No, he stayed focused. He focused on what they're good at, and the Falcons are getting really good really quickly. No one, in my opinion, is talking enough about how good the Atlanta Falcons have become. And you look at a very winnable NFC South. The Bucs look terrible. The Saints, we'll see how they look. They obviously have a lot of issues of their own right. The Panthers, first overall pick for a reason. You have the Atlanta Falcons. I would not be surprised at all if you fast forward to this time next year, we're talking about reigning NFC South division champion Atlanta Falcons, and it's because of off seasons like these. That's how they would get there. All right, Miles, we would like to give a special thanks to our partner in today's video, Neuro.
That's right, Nick. And I want you to go with me on a journey really fast. I want you to imagine this. It's 4th and goal in the big game, Nick. Your team is relying on you to make the big-time game-winning play. I know you've been in this situation before, Nick. The stadium is roaring. The clock is ticking. The game is on the line. But if only in that moment you were able to have some Neuro Gum. Neuro Gum will help you stay concentrated, and it gives you a burst of energy without a nasty crash.
That's right, Mize. Neuro has thoughtfully curated ingredients and does endless lab testing, which means that you can reach the right state of mind safely and consistently. That's the most important part. It gives you a clean burst of energy and focus without the jitters of coffee or any of those other energy drinks.
That's right, Nick. And if you click our sponsor link in the description below, you can enjoy energy, calm, and focus whenever you need it.